The Advanced Sports Analytics Podcast. It's Tuesday, June 15th. I'm here with Stuart Gibson. We're going to chat about the U.S. Open. Stuart, I'm pretty fired up about this one. What about you?
Yeah, always fun when a major tournament weekend. Great field this weekend. I think we tend to see that most majors, but really does feel like we've got an exceptional field this weekend, and it'd be fun to see Rahm back after the withdrawal. We got DJ back. I know he played last weekend, but has been missing some time with injuries. Just an absolutely stacked field. You look at the multipliers and guys like Reed and Hovland and Webb Simpson. These are great golfers, and they're kind of outside of the top 10 as far as SuperDraft multiplier goes. I think there's a number of kind of deeper, compelling names that we can have our eye on. So I'm stoked. It's going to be a great weekend.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one. I've played this course a fair number of times, and I'm looking forward to watching on TV. So setup type stuff, I've already done a decent bit of research. They expect it to be super tough. They're planning to do something a little bit different where they have the rough actually a bit longer as you go farther from the tee to sort of penalize some of the long drivers and put a premium on driving accuracy. They've been, I guess, kind of fed up in the setups with the bombers getting into the rough, but being okay because they're able to hit wedges and so forth. So I think it will be all-around golfers that do very well. Distance is a good thing because this is a long course. You have a lot of super long par fours in particular. I think it's going to play hard and fast, so you're not going to have you're going to have a lot of missed greens. Short game is at an ultra premium, and then I think there will be a lot of variance this week because I think on the POA greens, I've read, and I can also say from personal experience that they tend to get a bit puffy, meaning that if you play in the afternoon, they have a lot of cleat marks and so forth, foot marks, and they just don't roll true. So basically, I think there's a lot of chance involved with who putts well in a given week. And when you combine that with the fact that the scores are going to hover around par, I think there's a good bit of variance this week. So yeah, that's where we're at. I have some golfers that I'm just kind of taking strong stances on and fading, and I have some golfers that I love, and that's where we are.
Yeah. So with that course fit stuff in mind, we can kind of jump into for those of you who are new to our projection optimizer tool, for the SuperDraft projections, we actually have that available as free SuperDraft projections. We do provide some course info, heuristics, and with some information about some of the heavier strokes gain traits for the course. It's going to be at Torrey Pines South. So we haven't had a Torrey Pines South only tournament in a while. They usually play Torrey Pines as a split course for, I believe, the Farmers, but would expect the courses to play fairly similarly. I do know the South is supposed to be a decent bit harder than the North, but with similar course designs and upkeep, would expect kind of some of the trait weights to carry similarly between the North and South course. The data would suggest that some of the, pretty much off the tee is kind of a underweighted metric, and stuff like strokes gained approach and putting tend to play up between the two courses. And you also called out POA greens. We have some players with some pretty significant, POA green specific putting. So in the app, you can sort by POA strokes gained to see who are some of the best putters on POA greens. And then also in the app, you can see players' course history with their average strokes gained over the last 6 years and the number of appearances they've made at the Torrey Pines split venue. So I think all useful when considering kind of course fit, players that you might expect to play the POA greens well, and also course history. But yeah, the meat and potatoes really in the projections tab where you can view our player projections, sort through which players have kind of strong raw projections. Also, important to consider player multipliers. I think, DFS players who aren't using, real solid projection and kind of optimization tool, can be difficult, I think, to kind of consolidate understanding of players' multipliers and how that factors into post multiplier projections. So, we try to make that pretty simple in the projections tab. So starting at the top, guys who just project super well from a raw standpoint, Rahm, I think, has just the highest win odds by a pretty significant margin. And even though he's at the 1x multiplier, the lowest multiplier on the slate, our projections suggest that it could be warranted. He's been playing great golf as of late, was dominating last weekend 2 weekends ago, rather, until he had to withdraw for COVID, and just has really great win odds. Betfair has him at 9-1. And I think the next best win odds behind him are Johnson and DeChambeau at 15-1. So while he is a low multiplier, you're not getting a ton of juice. I think it could be warranted, and our projections would seem to suggest that. Are you in or out on Rahm, and just kind of with this tier of players that are at 1x? So Thomas, DJ, DeChambeau, Koepka. Are there any guys at kind of this low multiplier, high win probability that you think could challenge Rahm or stand a good chance to challenge Rahm from a projection standpoint?
My view is that the plays that are going to determine your equity on the week are the high multiplier guys, and the low multiplier guys are all great plays, but the best ones like Rahm and Rory will come with the highest ownership. And so those guys won't matter so much for your results as the high multiplier guys. And I think the beauty of our model is we do a good job of specifying which high multiplier guys are great value. We'll get into that in a moment. We have guys like Vegas high up. I just wanted to do a side note on course fit. There's a lot of debate about whether you can model the course based on the Farmers Open, which is usually held in January or February, or you have to sort of throw out that data and think of it as an entirely new course. I'm with you. I believe that you can use the Farmers Open as very much a comparable event. But it is useful to think about the other side of the argument and think about what kind of adjustments you need to make. People who say that you should just throw out the Farmers Insurance Open altogether would say that in June, it plays much faster, it plays much shorter, it plays much higher scoring with much more demand for driving accuracy. So you take players that in the past have just X'd this event from their schedule, guys like Webb Simpson, they're slightly shorter relative to golfers of their caliber, of their world rank. They place a premium on accuracy and short game. And so they've just avoided the Farmers because they don't think that their relative strength is playing 470-yard par fours. So there are people that say that the Farmers data should be thrown out. I don't believe that. But if if you are making adjustments at the margin, you want to go for guys that will do well with tight fairways, high driving demands, and if you're sort of anecdotally looking at it, because we don't have so many US Open setups that have been played at Torrey, anecdotally what we can say is that the premium wedge players, great short game guys, have done really well at US Opens at Torrey, whereas those guys tend not to show up at the Farmers Insurance Open in February because it's just too long and too demanding. So you think about like the famous Rocco Medier versus Tiger Woods US Open. Rocco Medier, in that year, was one of the shortest hitters on tour, was a premium putter and short game guy. You think about guys like Brent Snedeker that have had good results. There has seemed to be a premium for short game and scrambling, whereas that is not true in February. So, like, I would say if you believe that it plays somewhat similar to the Farmers, you love guys like Tony Finau. Great short game, but extremely comfortable on a 450 plus yard par 4. If you think that it's a different course and it plays much faster and much tighter, maybe he's not your guy. And then for guys like Bryson, again, if you think that it's a much tighter, much different course, it is not the setup during the US Open, but in February, it's a good setup for him. So let's sort of go to our adjusted values. Let's look at the high multiplier guys that our model likes a good bit. I'll just run through our top 5 players to show that we do like a lot of the low multiplier guys. Our top 5 are Vegas, McIlroy, Rahm, Zalatoris, Schauffele. Then the next 5 are English, Finau, Hogue, Steele, and Justin Suh. So, like, you take guys in our top 10, like Vegas, Hogue, and Suh. Those guys are 1.55, 1.6, and 1.5. Those are the guys that are going to differentiate your lineup on a week like this. And you think about a course where you're playing close to par, and a lot of your birdies are sort of determined by chance or whatever. There's so much value that comes from having a multiplier of 1.6. Like, these are the guys that are going to determine your lineup. And I would say in a tournament, you kind of want at least 2 or 3 of these high multiplier guys in your lineup.
Yeah, that seems sensible to me. I do worry, like, the uber high guys like Vegas, Hogue, Suh, we're like high on Martin Laird. These are, Hoagie. These are pretty high volatility guys. And, Vegas, I think, might absorb a good bit of ownership. He's been popular in recent weeks and I think has played well. And I think he's been outplaying that 1.55 multiplier. But, they are high volatility guys. And, like, it's, I think for PGA, like, balanced builds are kind of for the salaried formats, balanced builds are the way to go. Like, we are okay with taking a shot on, like, super low salary guy to get maybe an extra top tier golfer in. But I think rarely is, like, a PGA good approach to be like, well, give me, 3 like super deep plays so that I can get the 3 kind of highest equity players. So, like, I would be inclined to set like some sort of rule, like max one of these like super high guys, and really get access to more guys in like the 1.15 to 1.3 range. Like to me, Rory, Zalatoris, like Finau probably stand to be quite popular, but I do think like a guy like English is a guy with 1.25x is a pretty decent multiplier. It's not like exceptional, but probably in the bottom half or so of multipliers. I think like that's an area where you can differentiate and still have not like a ton of volatility the way you do with like say Hogue. Steele would be another guy, like he's been playing quite well, and I think sets up well for this course. Above average putter, kind of neutral in terms of approach play. Palmer would be a guy at 1.35, super consistent, great putter, good approach play. He's also pretty decent off the tee, but that figures to not play up a ton. But to me, like that's where, I don't want to try to differentiate solely with like, go Vegas, go Hogue, and then eat chalk with like Rory, Rahm, Schauffele, Finau kind of thing. I would prefer to do kind of a layered mix of like one of Vegas, Hogue, Sue, Laird maybe, and then take like two guys from kind of the 1.15 range. And I think there is appearing to be, at least per our projections, a lot of value in the 1.15 to like 1.35 range. So taking like a smattering of guys from that 1.35 up to 1.15 range, I think would be the approach I would want to take.
How popular do you think some of the high multiplier guys like Vegas will be? And I agree with you that they're insanely high volatility. Like we could go to Betfair and pull up the cut odds, but I would guess that Vegas is like under 50% to make the cut.
Yeah,
probably like barely under 50% to make the cut.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. I think he will be the most popular of kind of the 1.5 and up. He has been like quite high ownership, like 60% plus in cash, like 20 to 30% in tournaments. For past tournaments where there's been kind of a weaker field, I think given that there's a stronger field and there's just more top tier golfers to choose from, I think also the fact that it's a major, we'll probably see just a little more casual action. Like I would guess, his ownership will be well below those marks and probably be something like 20 to 30% cash, 10 to 20% tournament ownership. But like I think that's high for these high multiplier guys. Like guys like Hogue never get hardly any ownership. Tom Hoagie hardly gets any ownership. Schwartzel has been popular in past tournaments with weaker fields, but I think his ownership will be down. Like people are like kind of privy to like Schwartzel and Fratelli in some of these weaker fields, but I think in the in kind of a deeper, stronger field, like they'll be pretty low ownership, but I would expect them to be below Vegas. So yeah, like with that in mind, I mean, just like any DFS sport, like you don't have to, like, people think to differentiate, like I need to get like, 2-3 guys that are sub 10%, sub 5%. I mean, with golf, like the ownerships are never massive for players. So like all you need is, maybe one guy in the, 10% or below ownership bucket. And then if you just get the right guys in kind of the 15 to 30% ownership bracket, I think you're in good shape and you have a decent chance of winning. And of course, also the SuperDraft tournaments like aren't super large in terms of number of players. So it's not like DraftKings tournament where you have to beat out like 100,000 to 100,000 plus guys. So I don't know. That's kind of my spiel on some of these high multiplier guys. I do think you could find yourself getting into trouble if you're like, all right, well, I need, at least two guys in kind of the 1.4 plus bracket. I think my preference would be to do a smattering of like maybe one guy in 1.4 and then, a guy or two in kind of the 1.15 to 1.35, and then, be willing to go like no more than say two guys in kind of that 1.05 and under bucket.
Yeah. And on SuperDraft, what we've noticed is that ownership doesn't concentrate so highly on the high value guys. Like, it just sort of spreads all over the place. So unlike other sites, it serves you to actually just play the high equity, high value guys. And I do think guys like Rom and Vegas are good chalk. What you kind of want to look for is you want to take models that you trust, like the advanced sports analytics model, and take the best plays from our model, but also look for strong backup from the betting markets. So you have big betting markets like Betfair and Pinnacle. And if you go to Pinnacle Sports, you'll see that our analytics line up strongly with the betting markets. So just for instance, Rom is getting incredible backing this week. He is a minus 160 favorite against Dustin. He's a minus 175 favorite over Brooks. He's a minus 140 favorite over Bryson. He's minus 138 against Schauffele. He's getting incredible backing this week. And even Vegas is being backed strongly in both the head-to-heads and the player to win. Like, if you look at guys that he's priced similarly to, he's like a minus 170 favorite in the head-to-head. He's priced similarly to guys that are 800 to 1 to win outright, and he's currently 290 to 1 to win. So he's getting a strong betting market action, and in golf you can do pretty well by just sort of iteratively going to the betting markets and replacing guys in your lineup that are valued more highly by the betting markets at the same price as someone that you already have in your lineup.
And I think the SuperDraft format makes it easy to take that approach. Like in DraftKings or FanDuel, you can make comparisons of one player versus another as far as who's the better value. But you also have to spend, or you want to spend, kind of close to your full salary. So sometimes you have to take it is advantageous to take lower per dollar value players simply to fill out kind of your salary. With SuperDraft, I think you kind of just can eyeball guys one against the other, and there's really not much incentive to there's no salary that you want to like try to spend towards. You kind of just can eyeball guys, and looking at Vegas, Betfair this afternoon had him at 200 to 1, and you look, he's at 155, and then got similar odds to guys like Schwartzel is looking like a pretty good deal at 1.45, slightly better win odds in Vegas, but Steele 135, who we like a good bit, but Henley 125, Johnson 1.4, Kuchar 1.35, Kevin Na got similar win odds to Vegas and at 1.25. Just from kind of an eyeball multiplier versus win odds, like Vegas is looking like a slam dunk. Schwartzel's looking quite strong. Stuart Sink even, he's shown good upside at times. And I think a pretty good course fit, putts well, has great approach game, struggles around the green and off the tee. But he's looking like just a good Stroman, who we like a good bit. Both Stroman and Sink, I think have just good multipliers relative to their Betfair win odds. I think that's a perfectly reasonable approach, for someone who's trying to build lineups by hand.
Yeah. And my intuition at first was that with SuperDraft, you should kind of go for 3 high multiplier guys, but I can definitely see the case to your approach of just sort of having one high multiplier guy that you're taking a chance on, or two, because basically in a format where you have $10,000 prize pool and $2,000 up front, you do get high equity for cashing, and the likelihood that a guy like Vegas is going to hurt your lineup is pretty high. The cost of playing a chalky Rahm or Rory is very limited. I mean, these guys are going to make the cut 90% of the time, or in this format, even though we're only taking 60 and it's a huge field, like they might even be above 90% to make the cut. Like they're not going to hurt your lineup. So with only 20% up top, I can actually see the argument for getting quite chalky and just picking one or two high multiplier guys per lineup.
Yeah, and I think also like strength of field plays in. So, so far, I guess over the 2020 season, dating back even to the 2020 calendar year, we've had a lot of these kind of small tournaments, and with COVID, we've seen guys kind of in and out. We've seen big guys like Johnson have injury problems that they've been dealing with. I think in some of these smaller tournaments with weaker fields and kind of less prestige and even a smaller purse that kind of motivates some of these big these elite players, there are ways for some of these deeper plays to sneak into the cut, even sneak into the top 20 or so. But with how strong this field is this weekend, like I just see some of these guys like Vegas, Hogue, et cetera, having a hard time, low probability to kind of make it to the weekend. And that doesn't mean that you should fade guys who are low probability, because the value is immense if they do. You just don't want to kind of parlay together too many super low likelihood outcomes for these smallish tournaments. I guess I want to end by just looking at our optimal lineup and kind of hearing from you ways that you think maybe we could improve upon the optimal, if there's pressure or kind of weak points that you're concerned about, and maybe some pivots that you might consider to potentially lower variance, or give yourself kind of lower risk of ruin. So as I see right now, our optimal is Rahm, Rory, Schauffele, Zalatoris, English, Vegas. So like to me, that is a really nice build even for tournament purposes. I mean, I think all these guys will be fairly popular, with maybe the exception of English, but you get Rahm and Schauffele up top, super Rahm, super low multiplier, but like even Schauffele at 1.1 has some juice. You have nice exposure with kind of Rory, Zalatoris, and English to some of these mid to high multiplier guys. And then you have kind of that one, high juice 1.55 Vegas in the lineup. I mean, to you with this lineup, do you see kind of areas that you would want to improve on, golfers that you're particularly concerned about, and maybe players that you have more confidence in that you might want to like slide in places some of those riskier golfers?
Yeah, it's a pretty convincing lineup. Harris English, he's a guy that he usually serves you well in smaller field things. He's a guy I tend to avoid if it gets very big field, but as you mentioned, this is not a particularly top-heavy tournament, smaller field. I like English here. The weak spots are probably Vegas and Finau, but you do, we think, have to choose your spots on the high multiplier guys. And Vegas has the most analytical backing and the most betting market backing, so I'm fine there. Finau for this format strikes me as high uncertainty, high volatility. So I would say he's the weak spot. I kind of like the lineups with Xander. So I kind of like something like Rahm, Rory, Xander, Zalatoris, English, Vegas, or something like that.
Yeah.
That's sort of where I am. I think Finau is a great play. I just think he's a little bit high volatility for this format. And just to back up what we were saying about Rom, how like he's a great play and it almost doesn't matter how popular he is. The betting markets, aside from him sort of being high single digits to win the tournament, he's currently 40% to finish in the top 10, which is just remarkable. So he's a very safe play for this format.
Yeah. I mean, I would expect Rory to be pretty chalky, don't you think? I mean, just given his betting odds, which are quite favorable, like relative to his multiplier. There have been times like where, DJ, DeChambeau, Xander, even Morikawa, Koepka, JT, like when these guys are available, it seems like Rory gets overlooked, but he did have that tournament win, and I think clearly has the best odds relative win odds relative to multiplier. I mean, I would expect him to be pretty chalky for tournament purposes. Like, do you have concerns about going like Rom plus Rory plus I would guess Zalatoris will be probably the third most popular in their top lineup? Are you kind of just saying, well, he projects well and try to differentiate elsewhere?
I think he's a great play. In terms of realized outcomes, there's not much of a difference between like 1.05 and 1.15. In terms of projection, there is a remarkable difference. So if the ownership is going to spread out as we expect, I think you lock in Rory. If you tell me that Rory is like insanely popular, then you get off of him, right? Like but he is value-wise a top 2 guy. And he is priced like a 65 to 1 shot, and he's a 23 to 1 shot. So,
got it. And then last question I have, we've been talking about, we love Rom, we like Rory, we like Schauffele, but in this 1.05 kind of, or we can go like 1.1 and up. So Rom, JT, DJ, DeChambeau, Koepka, Cantlay, Morikawa, Spieth, Schauffele, Matsuyama. Are there any guys that we haven't talked about that maybe don't project super well, but you just feel kind of have, like, for example, like DeChambeau, I just think will generate very little ownership. Are there any guys that you think will go under-owned? And then are there any guys in this tier that you just want to stay away from completely?
I think guys like Dustin and Bryson are probably better plays than their projection suggests. And I think that those are guys that you should have in a lot of lineups. And I think guys like Spieth or like Hovland, Reed are guys that you should have in fewer lineups. I would be overweight some of the like big hitters, guys like Dustin and Bryson, Brooks. And the reason is simply that there's a premium on birdies and eagles, right? There's a premium on variance, and there's a premium on birdies and eagles. So if you go birdies are worth 2 points in this case. We also have the 3 birdies in a row bonus. And these guys are likely to do well in par 5 scoring. Although, okay, I guess we've sort of taken a look at this before, and it's actually not as beneficial to high variance golfers as, say, DK scoring and FanDuel scoring, right? Because you get the birdie bogey combo is worth 1 point, whereas par is worth 2 points, right? That's pretty crazy, actually.
Yeah. It's like the scoring is scaled perfectly to strokes, right? Like you get pretty much equal points for every stroke you gain, kind of regardless of how you do it. As where DraftKings, the reward for what that means is like the reward for a bogey is equal to the reward for a birdie is equal to the penalty for a bogey, and the reward for a par is kind of equal to the combination of a birdie plus a bogey for SuperDraft. On DraftKings and FanDuel, I believe as well.
No, a birdie is 2 points and a bogey is -1 point. So if you go birdie bogey, you have 1 point, whereas if you go par, you get 2 points. So it actually rewards no variance.
Okay, right. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, I mean the guys with consistency, and that's something I think we've actually recently added into our model. Previously, just looking at like stuff like strokes gained, kind of cross tournament or cross round, I guess, metrics, and we've recently ingested like volatility metrics into the model, such that we are considering that for SuperDraft. So
yeah, we talked about this in detail. We talked about this aspect of the scoring system in detail during the Masters, and I had sort of forgotten it because golf scoring is so ingrained in my mind, where variance is good and birdies are at a premium. I had sort of forgotten that the SuperDraft scoring didn't go that way. So basically, quantitatively, what this means is that the high multiplier guys, even though they are high variance, are actually higher value than you would intuitively think. And it makes me kind of, well, it's difficult because it is a smaller field and it is not top heavy, but this scoring format makes you in general love high multiplier guys.
Yeah, if you can get those guys to just like, they don't have to go out and make birdies. They just have to avoid bogeys, which I think is an easier task, at least in my mind. So yeah, that does tend to skew a little bit towards the high multiplier guys. It gives them more of a chance, I guess, to put up scores that are relevant and kind of can be tournament viable.
All right. Well, this will do us. I'm looking forward to this weekend. You don't have any babies yet, but one of the benefits of being a dad is like this Sunday. I don't get so many asks for Father's Day, but I'm planning to ask my kids like one solid hour, one solid hour of like pure U.S. Open spectatorship. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, no, it'll be good. I like the West Coast course. I think always looks super nice. Yeah, no, should be a good event. Hopefully, a lot of those big names can stick around for the weekend and be fun to see. Kind of a young gun. I mean, we've had good fortune, I think, in early 2021 with Zalatoris. I think was a lot of fun for the Masters. I didn't watch any of the tournament last weekend, but this guy Higo, quite young, and I think it's fun to see kind of these names make these young players make big splashes on a big stage. So it would be fun to see kind of a deeper guy at least contend late into the weekend.
All right. Well, we will chat next week.